Hello, thank for your presence, dear member, dear friends. I repeat, but there is new face for me. I repeat that during the COVID-19, the activities of our chamber are specially dedicated about the situations and relations between Belgium, Luxembourg, Russia, and Belarus. And it's not all bad news, I think, because today the webinar customs and logistic challenges seems very positive. Welcome to Dmitry Subochev. Dmitry is the first customs secretary of the Embassy of the Russian Federation in the Kingdom of Belgium. And I welcome also Robin Makils. Hello, Robin. Robin is the customs attaché of the Belgian Embassy in Moscow. And for the logistic part, we welcome today Robert Mann. Hello, Robert.
Hello.
Robert is the General Director and COO of Allers Russia. The presentation will be followed by your question and answers, always in order to support you in the eventually problems that your company may encounter as a result of the crisis caused by coronavirus. And I take also the opportunity to advise you that our next webinar in collaboration with London Transatlantic Chamber of Commerce will take place end of July and will be dedicated to LNG. It's the new strategy direction of Russian government. LNG, you know, it's the liquefied natural gas. And the government wish to create joint ventures with foreign partners and licensors of in direction of joint LNG projects. Well, if you have any questions more personal about customs, I understand this perfectly. Manon, moderator today, will give you now the information. Thank you. Manon, please, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you, and hello everyone. So just few information and reminders. Now you're used to webinars, but just so you know, all your microphones are muted. If you want to take the floor, well, you can just activate them by yourself, but while during the presentations, we'll ask you to keep them muted. You'll have, so as Arkady said, the opportunity to ask questions at the end of the webinar. Either you ask a question yourself by raising your hand in the chat and say that you want to ask a question, or you can ask them anonymously, and I will ask them for you by sending a message to my WhatsApp number. I'll just write it down in the comment chat right now. So that's about it. I think we can start first with Dmitry Subochev, First Secretary Customs of the Embassy of the Russian Federation in the Kingdom of Belgium, that will talk about customs challenges. Thank you, Dmitry, you have the floor.
Okay, I think I did it myself, yeah? Good afternoon and good evening, I presume, to some of you maybe. Thank you, Manon, for passing the floor, and thank you, Arkady, and all your team for organizing this short event. It's a good opportunity just to see familiar faces and to know that you are doing fine, and I hope that all is well with your families and all people you care about. Thanks for the opportunity, Arkady, to speak on possible challenges for customs. When I was preparing for this event, I definitely contacted the as we call it, initial sources of information, the management from the field, from Russian customs, from the central administration, with regard to obtain an objective situation. And actually, I'm happy to note that my presentation or a report for you would be rather positive in terms of the difficulties and the response from customs to existing challenges. So we are limited in time, so I will definitely go straight forward to my information. I'm sure maybe some of you know even more about the practical issues that may arise during the business process in bilateral trade or between Belgium and Russia, or on trade lanes between our countries, which involve other countries as well. So indeed, the Russian government and then the Ministry of Finance and Customs introduced the similar measures to many countries all around the world to address the key problems related to COVID-19 pandemic. And one of my questions from the beginning was whether will it affect the physical traffic of cargo, specifically on road routes, and definitely there was a straightaway exemption when government introduced urgent measures with regard to restriction of border crossing by individuals. The prohibitions in respect of individuals were immediately exempted with regard to the drivers on cargo movement and all the crews of respective means of convenience that are involved in international traffic of cargo. So basically it was only complemented by standard security measures like sanitary measures for individuals, social distancing, and probably that's it. So normally the cargo was moving and it's now getting better, just because the overall situation is probably improving a little bit. What I can say is that the COVID-19 basically did not affect the processes of customs clearance and declaration in Russian customs. People shifted more, those who were not using the personal account and information system of customs immediately turned to this way of dealing with customs, because all online services for traders that are available in the personal cabinet on the customs information system provide the full remote control of all the documents and permissions and licenses in customs system. During the COVID, the new additional feature was added to the customs declaration system, providing that all during the operations with the licensed goods that require the license for imports or exports were no longer required to be controlled manually. And you don't have to present the document itself, either in electronic copy or a manual copy. The trader has to enter the number of the license, of respective license, in the customs declaration. The rest of the check will be done by the system automatically, because I don't want to repeat, but I do from time to time my previous presentations with regard to facilitation measures and reforms done by Russian customs over the past 5 years. We are in charge of interagency cooperation system, which involves more than 28 agencies all around the country, and Russian customs is entitled by the government to maintain actually this system. We developed that. We introduced the roadmaps for each and every agency according to the customs needs, when we need one or another document or permission related to the movement of goods and their declaration. Of course, in parallel, Russian Federation and then further the Union itself, the Eurasian Economic Union, introduced some specific lists for products. But actually, we received lots of questions from traders, because there were interpretations that these lists that provide some extra facilitation, let's say a green priority for certain commodities, and contrary the prohibitions to others, could be applied to a regular trade. No, actually regular trade is going in the same way it was going before. The cargo is moving, and actually all the delays that related to cargo movement basically were connected to certain border measures and protection measures that are that have nothing to do with customs regulations in the light of COVID-19 situation. And among those lists, of course, there were green lanes and priority arranged and priority dispatching for declarations that related to food products, to relief consignment and essential supplies. And all the respective lists are published on the websites of the Eurasian Economic Commission and the Russian Customs. At the same time, the exports of specific commodities were prohibited. Some protection measures like masks or sanitizing liquids, those were restricted for exports, except the relief consignments if we granted help to other country. Foodstuff, many foodstuff were limited to exports just in order to prevent the possible shortages or scarcity in the domestic market. I can confirm, from, according to my colleagues, that all the performance indicators that are set in the customs strategy by the government, in particular the risk management system indicators, time release, the control time, the dwelling time in customs remain at the same level. So we are actually monitored by the government within the same deadlines to arrange our services as we did before the COVID-19. Also, some extensions were given to temporary admission of transport vehicles and some commodities, and to some licenses that faced difficulties because of the overall global situation of freedom of movement. So, for example, people who imported their car temporarily, just drove in the country and stuck there for some period of time, their temporary admission is extended. It was extended to September. Maybe, depending on the situation, there will be a further extensions. So everything is controlled by government. Again, I said that in the testing connection before the conference started, that what we see is that it's maybe a bit a shame to confess, but the COVID-19 situation really helped the Russian customs to and basically the people, the traders, to use more the electronic system, because some people were still using some scan copies, manual copies, and those services that required a separate registration for people to work online. They were quite reluctant to that, but the isolation helped people to use the technology at maximum scale. So what else? Even electronic copies are no longer requested. I also can add that Russian Customs organizes systematic webinars. I checked myself today. It's basically in Russian, and I hope that at least in companies that work with Russia, you have people who can get connected and be aware of what happens in the web seminars, and even participate there, because it's a regular, let's say, presentation and answers questions session. I don't know where is the chat on this platform. Chat, I see. I can chat to everybody. Yes, I can just share the link of the Russian website where you can get an access to all planned webinars and video materials from those that already took place. Another maybe important observation from my side, and I noted that we, of course, as liaison officers, like Robin and me, we do bridge the customs administrations on many tracks of customs cooperation, and it was noted that the enforcement blocks of customs administrations, you know, were working in a very actively and in coordinated mode during this period. But then we realized it's simply because those evil, let's say, illicit traders who are trying to exploit each and every opportunity, of course, in the periods like pandemia, becoming more active. And we see that lots of smuggling, actually the commercial smuggling, the fraud is ongoing, and customs is really engaged in this work nowadays. But it's a common trend, you know, Christmas time, also New Year time, official holidays, or contrary, some urgent situation are always, unfortunately, the playground for those who want to misuse the existing regulations. I think that would be the whole presentation from my side. Maybe Robin would add something. I can also report here by contacting with Belgian colleagues that actually all operations are moving well on the Belgian side in customs. And if you have any questions, I will be really happy to answer. If I'm not ready now, we will definitely follow it up together after this connection. And I think my contact data is available to everybody. It's on the website, it's on the of the embassy, website of Federal Customs Service, and of course with the chamber. So please feel free if you have any questions or situations that we need to address. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dmitry. Yes, don't hesitate to ask us for contact details of our speakers. We will be happy to share their contacts with you. So we can go straight away to Robin Makils, Customs Attaché of the Embassy of Belgium in Moscow, who will, I think, add some information to Dmitry's presentation. Thank you, Robin. You have the floor.
Hello. Hello, everybody. My name is Robin Makils, and as Dimitri already told, I work as a customs attaché at the Belgian embassy in Moscow, mainly doing about the same job in Russia as Dimitri does in Belgium. And I can actually not say much because Dimitri has already said almost everything that is to say, especially about the Russian side. I think Federal Customs Service has been working very professionally during this crisis. As far as I know, there are no big delays on anything. So I think everything is going the way it should be on the Russian side. From the Belgian side, also for us, there hasn't been that many changes to the bad side. We work as fast or as slow, according to some people, as we always have been doing. And everything is going according to plan. We have also added some advantages for traders because we want to keep doing the social distancing. So for now, if you want certain certificates that you used to need on paper, now you can get these certificates by email or on a digital version, like certificates of origin. But for some other more difficult certificates, like for example, Euro1, we still need it on paper from you because we are afraid that if we don't do it ourselves, the paper version, that other customs authorities from other countries would not be inclined to accept it. Because, you know, in some countries, they are still very bureaucratic, and if it's not the official paper with the stamp of customs, it will not be accepted. But in general, the only advice that I can give to people is that they have to keep follow the regulations and to make sure that they have all the necessary documents. Because usually if there is a delay on the Russian side, that is because there are some problems with the documents. So if you have everything there and you are on time, because there might be small delays because of the social distancing and because of less people working, there are some possibilities, but just make sure you do everything the right way, and then both of our customs authorities will make sure that everything keeps going according to plan. That's about everything I can say because Dmitry has mentioned already everything there was needed to say.
Good, thank you, Robin. I think that then we can welcome Robert Mann, General Director of Alex Russia, who will actually share his experience and share what the logistic challenges Alex is facing during this period of COVID-19, and especially doing business with Russia. Robert, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you very much, Manon. Good afternoon, everybody. A very pleasure to join you today. As it was said, so I will share with you our experience in ALAS of the COVID situation in Russia, how it's influenced our business. And of course, being the General Director, the COO, mostly it's from an operational perspective, should we say like that. But I have prepared a presentation, which I should open. Please let me know if you see that, okay?
Robert,
visible?
we see your file layout, not the presentation itself.
Okay. Let's try again. One impact of coronavirus has been the proliferation of many web-based, whereas none of us are familiar. It's a learning curve. So let's, do you see that?
Wait. No.
No?
I can do it if you want, since I have your.
Yeah, please, Maron, if you try. Yeah, we did practice earlier on, and it worked perfectly. It was great.
Always like that. Wait, I'll try. Okay.
Okay, very good. And we make that maybe the full screen. Excellent. Okay, so as it says then, the challenges we faced during the coronavirus in Russia. If you go to the next slide, Manon. So to put a little bit of context, I can just say if you ALAS in Russia, I mean, ALAS has locations, as you see from the map, in many different countries. But in Russia, we have 250 of our own direct employees, plus our subcontractors. So at a peak period, we might come close to 400 people working in a variety of different environments. Of course, we have people working in our office, in our warehouses, but also in our clients' factories in some cases. And really spread out across Russia, St. Petersburg, the main location, but also Moscow and other cities. So this is just to give a little bit of the context of how we've met coronavirus, our environment. Okay, then what I want to say, I mean, of course, the coronavirus, as all companies, has presented us some challenges. The challenges I'd like to mention, of course, remote working. I mean, this is something not specific for logistics, but anyway, we have also experienced it. Then how it's impacted our warehouse operations and how we've responded to that. Also our own experience of transportation and customs formalities, and also a little bit, one slide about how this situation has changed our view of the future, where we see our business going. So in terms of the remote working, I'm sure we all had the same experience where the global coronavirus crisis kind of emerged slowly. We were watching it on the news, but it was all happening somewhere else. And then one day, in middle of March, it comes to Russia as well. And suddenly we are faced with that we have to send everyone, all from our office, to work remotely. And fortunately, we were rather well prepared for this situation, since maybe the flexible working practices of home working we had already started to use before the crisis, which was very fortunate. One thing we faced was, of course, providing everyone, once everyone is sent home to work, they have different IT needs. You have to provide them, of course, with the various hardware or computers or monitors or whatever it is they need, scanners, so on. Also fortunate for us, but maybe not for every company, was the move to online working. I mean, for us, maybe not Zoom, but Microsoft Teams or Skype. This is a very familiar way of working, so no real problems there. Probably the biggest problem we faced was document flow. It was already mentioned, I mean, customs documents, other documents, invoicing, we have different clients. A lot of that documentation in Russia is still paper. A lot of stamps are still required. And that was a challenge, but I would say something we managed very well. And in the same way as it was said about custom documentation moving to electronic documentation, this of course has also given us an extra boost in that direction for all other kinds of documentation as well. And probably also not specifically for logistics, but for any company, I mean, maintaining a team spirit. Once you send all the people to work from home, people have different situations. I mean, private situations, and I think you have to keep that in focus. You know, keep that in mind. And also, when everyone's working from home, of course, the trust is very critical. You know, you can't keep following up your employees every 5 minutes to see what they're doing because you're worried that maybe they're not at their computer. Though, I mean, I have heard of other companies' experiences maybe struggled with that, but for us, it went rather well. Then coming more to the logistics itself, I mean, of course, with our warehouse operations in 5 locations, the focus from the very beginning, of course, was to protect our employees and to continue to serve our clients' businesses. And the first step with that, and really one of the most important steps, was to establish a crisis management team that includes not just your management positions, but really all the key people who are involved. And we've met 3 times a week, all the time for the last, now I've lost count actually, how many months we've been doing it. But that regular contact, regular follow-up, able to make fast decisions has been very important, especially that at the early stages, there was a lot of uncertainty. What companies can continue to operate, what companies can't continue to operate, and being able to have that regular dialogue with our lawyer involved, able to give a clear message to our clients, and really to keep going. Then, of course, we had the first line of defense, which was about measuring temperature, providing the protective equipment. And I can say that at the early stages, suddenly needing to source thermometers and face masks and hand wash and all these things was a real challenge in the beginning, a real challenge, a lot of speculative pricing on those items, a lot of shortages. That has now normalized. So now you're able to buy all those things, access them, masks, without any problem. Then another thing we did, I mean, of course, we have multi-client warehouses. So in order to protect our individual clients from any disruption, should we have cases of the virus, we segregated our operations. So we divided the warehouse operations into 2 main groups. In the case of our largest operation in St. Petersburg, where each group had their own shifts, their own people, their own transport for the staff to and from work, in order that if there is a case, and if we come to the situation where we faced a large quarantine, which we haven't, very good. But anyway, if we did, it wouldn't affect our whole business. It wouldn't stop our whole business from running. Another measure that we've approached is regular testing. We may test it in the beginning, it was a little bit reactive testing, but now we've come to a regular cycle of testing every 2 weeks, every 14 days, where we test all of our own employees in the warehouse, but also, and importantly, all our subcontractors, the agency, the security company, the drivers of the buses, and so on. And that's given us confidence that we can, if there are any cases come to light, and there have been some cases, that we're able to respond in the shortest possible time. And of course, also very critical is communication to all stakeholders involved. What's going on? As I said, there have been several cases. Then you need to communicate that to your clients, what it means. Also communicate to the authorities, of course, the Rospotrebnadzor in this case. and we've managed to do that. So the warehouse operations have continued. With all these measures in place, I can say we've managed to continue without any major disruption. Then if we look at transportation itself, of course, big part of our business in Russia is transportation, both within Russia, but across borders. The coronavirus crisis has presented some challenges, but as it was always mentioned by Dimitri and Robin, you know, transportation, even from the very beginning, continued to move. Borders were open, drivers were able to cross borders, customs continued to work. So there hasn't been any sort of complete stop in that, though there has been disruption. I mean, there was disruption to transport flows in the beginning, where in Europe, in China first, then later in Europe, production units were stopped. So the flow of goods stops or slows down, and therefore the return flow coming out of Russia also slows down as the transport flows are disrupted. Of course, there have been delays with border formalities, mostly connected then to additional health checks, additional quarantine, measuring the temperature of drivers, and so on. So the flows across the borders have not stopped, but they have been complicated. And very much, I mean, as you saw in the beginning, we are active in different regions of Russia. We also have flows to and from Russia to different other countries. And the restrictions have very much varied between regions, region to region within Russia, but also different directions. Border with Kazakhstan has been particularly impacted. Border with China for road transportation also have seen some difficult periods. And then more specific forms of transportation, I mean, for example, it's not just the border or the availability of transport units, but with secure transportation, if you have a convoy, if you have a security escort with the trucks, maybe the escort, the drivers and their truck can cross the border, but the escort can't. And therefore you have to identify an alternative solution to make sure that the cargo is escorted across Europe, across different countries on its way to Russia. And there have also been client restrictions. I mean, some clients themselves have said, okay, you can't unload in our location if your driver has in the last 14 days been to this list of countries. For example, in the beginning it was Italy. Particularly if the driver has been to Italy in the last 14 days, then they're not able to enter our factory and unload their goods. So we've had to be able to deal with that as well. And then also, as I said in the beginning, a little bit to mention how we see the coronavirus crisis has impacted. I mean, this is something that's changed how we live and how we work, of course. And probably that's going to continue for the future in some way. Whereas some things have, there's some new restrictions, but there's also some other things that have been accelerated. Some trends that have gained a new energy, a new drive in that. Of course, the importance from warehousing and managing good stocks, I think that's clear for everyone. This has been a big disruption for many supply chains around the world. So the importance of good stock management, good warehousing is more important than ever, I think. Seasonality has been disrupted. There has been a big difference among our clients. Some clients have experienced, you know, sudden surge in demand. If it's anything connected to, of course, hygiene, medicines, foodstuffs, suddenly there has been a peak in demand earlier than the normal seasonality would show. And of course, other businesses have seen demand drop off, and they've seen a very slow period. Clearly, now retail has started to recover. There's clearly a much higher share of online shopping. And we see that as well in our own warehouse operations for clients, where the complexity of fulfillment has increased. Whereas as you're picking orders for online sales, there's a lot more work handling, whereas maybe storage volumes themselves have gone down. Of course, in this whole situation, and certainly we expect going forward, there's additional economic pressure. With any challenge, new opportunities will emerge, but there's a pressure on cost effectiveness, especially for those companies who've seen a drop off in demand. I mean, pressure on margins has increased, of course. And finally, I think it's said, I use this, the view of Charles Darwin, you know, who said it's not the strongest who survive, but those who are best able to adapt. And I think that's very true for this situation, the importance of being able to keep operating, keep running, but also to be agile and adaptable is, yeah, it's more important now than it ever was before. So that was my presentation in short. Any questions, of course, very, very welcome. I don't know, Manon, you're muted if you said something.
Yes, sorry. Thank you, Robert, for your presentation. I see that there is already a hand raising, Vasily Bortsov. So we'll pass to the question and answer session. So Vasily, if you want to ask a question, you're welcome to unmute. I see.
So, if you don't mind, you already mentioned that the role of the warehouses of the distribution is rising, so it's quite obvious, but still, I totally agree with you. So what I'm interested in is, could you please share your experience? As far as I know, you already started with to work with such headaches as these data metrics labeling. As far as I remember, your colleagues from St. Pete has already told that you're running tests on these purposes, and our, not Belgian but German clients, of course, interested in this market, this service, and they wonder if it's like running sustainable. Do you have any like starting problems?
Yeah, I understand, Vasily. That's correct. We had a project for one of our clients here, run by my colleagues in St. Petersburg, about the new labeling, the Chesny Znak labeling. We have implemented it for them. They're very pleased. It's of course still early days. So far, we haven't met any challenges with what we've done so far. But what we see is it is a developing situation. As I understand that the labeling has been applied progressively to different products. So those product groups that it's been applied to so far, we have managed. How that develops in the future, I think remains a little bit to be seen.
So this is like another topic which was roughly developed during this quarantine period. Like we all were waiting for another postponement of the like termination period for these trials. And of course, everybody waiting for the light industry category. So it will be the funnest thing we will have. So thanks for sharing.
Okay, do we have other questions? I see someone raising a hand. You can unswitch your microphone by yourself. Is it done? Here we go. Philip, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you. Just a question also. Do you see for global companies some changes towards supply chain? I want to say, do they tend more and more to work closer, cut their supply chain, working more local? Do you see this tendency with big companies?
Not specifically. I mean, like I said, we've seen that for different companies, the impact has been very different. So some have they've all reached out. I mean, I think in the very beginning, when it was unclear, there was a big question, who could continue working or not? Who should stop their business? Who was there? There was a list of companies. There was a lot of unclarity around that. So some were more brave and decided just to continue, you know, until someone forces them to stop. Others, maybe less local companies, but some more bigger global brands decided, no, we're gonna be super cautious here, and we're gonna stop our activities. I think in that sense, then they maybe reached out to through their supply chain to some of their clients who they could say, oh, well, you know, we are supplying our product to hospitals, for example, so therefore that must mean we should continue our business. But it's been really mixed. Like I say, some have seen a very low demand, quiet period, and others have seen a big peak.
Another question, but perhaps more for our customer officers. For only concerning the Corona crisis, do you see, you know, that one train can replace 40 trucks, so 40 less people? To put it very simple, do you see a tendency also transport by train than by trucks, or don't you see any difference?
I don't know what from colleagues from customs, with broader customs knowledge.
Oh,
we have rail transportation as well. I mean, honestly, in this situation, we haven't seen any significant change.
Okay.
Because the road transportation has continued, borders have been open, drivers have been exempt from the restrictions.
Okay.
Yeah, Dimitri, maybe you can answer.
No, I just wanted to add a little bit that I was in contact with Belgian customs from the very beginning of the recent complicated situation, and actually I just wanted to say a big thanks to Belgian customs, because we shared the statistics together as well in order to basically that was done more for explaining the expected fall, the drop in revenue, because we collect revenue, and definitely the follow-up situation of the COVID is, we believe that it's yet to come, because the economic effect is not there yet. But we were trying to monitor, of course, the numbers of consignments, the amounts of declarations, and to more or less forecast what will be the aftermath of the COVID. But from the data that I was looking together with Belgian customs, I saw that actually what I think there was a big shift to a sea cargo from the road movement. I don't know what were basically the reasons for that, but I definitely understand that there were more direct supplies that avoided the storage of goods in the customs warehouses. People started moving more the vessels, and it led to more transport declaration on the seaside. That was my impression from the data that I saw, at least on the track of Belgian-Russian trade.
I have a question for Dimitri and Robin. Thanks for the presentation also. If you would say that I'm talking about optimization and digitalization of customs procedures and customs processes. And if you look, let's say that I think the Belgian customs is more automated and digitalized as the Russian ones. And if the gap was, let's say, 10 before COVID, and I'm not talking about complexity, but just the automation of the processes. If the gap before Corona was 10, what would you say is the gap now between the two regions? Is it 5 or 3 or 4? And what do you think will be in future? Will they even more start to automate and have electronic system, or they will go back a bit to the old system? What is your idea about that?
Okay. First of all, I think I have the feeling that since the 6 years that I've been working here, I see Russia getting more automated and automated and automated. So yes, maybe there is still a gap of 10, but a couple of years ago it was 20. So I think the coming years, Russia will get closer and closer and closer to Belgium. Whether COVID is really a factor in that, I have my doubts, because I have the feeling that even without the virus, Russia would still be going more and more automated. You can see last year it was already also a big step. So maybe now it is 5, and I think it will get closer and closer, but we also keep trying the best we can, and we hope that we, as Belgium, we keep doing well, and we can only be happy if other countries follow that lead. But maybe Dimitri has still something to say on that.
Yeah, it's okay now. Yeah, thank you. It's a bit surprising to me that we are asked with such a challenging question, who is more automated. I think it's very disputable, and I would continue to argue, but I don't think that was basically the idea of your question. What I feel is the essence of your question is that whether we will, let's say, shift down back to some outdated paper works after the COVID. Indeed not, and actually the COVID was not the reason why we are in the process of automation. Actually, the automation and the digit is the concept of the future of the customs today. In the World Customs Organization, it's actually in the heart of the agenda of the organization that only digital processing is the future for customs in today's reality. And we can only add that, of course, COVID, just because of the isolation, did help the people to use the systems more. In terms of automation and what is the level, I think it's better to look into practical indicators and the data that exists in the custom systems in order to compare who's working faster. But I can declare that we are pretty far in terms of the leading organizations all around the world. And I would avoid comparison between such customs administrations like Belgium and Russia, because I think we are more or less on a similar track and actually compliant to similar standards of customs business today. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, David. Sometimes you have a bit more provocative question, then you get also more challenging answer. So thanks a lot.
May I ask question, please? Manon.
Yes, go ahead.
Did you hear me? Yes. But I'm in the same way as Stefan on the digitalization. When Robin he talked today about the paper certificate, and we live today, it's true, in the situation where we have the digital signature, etc. If the Belgium and Russia are on discussion to accept both side digital signature on the certificate of origin or in other paper documents in the future.
I will try to give you an answer on that. But this is a difficult discussion, and I'm not really the right person to talk about it. The reason that is because of the Belgian situation with competences. In Russia, customs is federal public service of economy. So I know that currently Russian customs is having a discussion on this issue with the Belgian government, but we as customs, we are not in this procedure. So I don't know exactly on what level we are at that, but maybe Dimitri knows more on this issue.
Yes, I can add to that, and thank you, Oleg, for your question. As regards to the specific agreement on recognition of electronic signature, it's a rather complicated question for international cooperation. But as far as the certificates of origin are concerned, indeed, we are in a very close negotiation and at a pretty advanced stage with Belgian Association of Chambers of Commerce and the Ministry of Economics in order to come to agreement on a verification system of certificates of origin. It's quite complicated and conceptual talks. They always take time, but as I said, we are rather at a very progressive phase now, and just scrubbing some details with regard to certificates of origin which relate to the interaction of the legal systems, because we have to understand that any process has, first of all, the legal implications and legal background. But we are taking care of this issue, in particular the certificates of origin. Actually, Russian customs is one of the let's say leaders of ideas in the global customs community with regard to the digitalization of different forms of documents and processes. For example, I was just talking half an hour ago with my colleagues. We are also initiating the process, and actually I'm happy to say that maybe it will be news to Robin, because it's a very fresh idea. We are trying to trigger the discussion in at the global stage with regard to digitalization of Kimberley certificates. These are the certificates, you know, it's about rough diamonds and the trade in rough diamonds, and Russia and Belgium are let's say a couple of biggest partners in the diamond market at the global stage. So actually it was Russian customs who initiated this process, and we are now trying to approach and discuss with Belgian colleagues to be the first two countries who will try to pilot the digital use of Kimberley certificates. It's a very sensitive and important area, the sector of international trade, and we do really believe that the digitalization is, of course, the first mean of security for illicit trade. So we are moving, and once we come to the final results, you will all definitely be aware and informed of that. But specifically as far as the certificates of origin are concerned, we do take care of this matter, and I think it's also maybe not the first as comparing to Kimberley process certificates digitalization, but one of the first discussions between the governments all around the world about the electronic verification of COs. Thank you.
Thank you, Dimitri. Do we have other questions? I see Jerome is raising hand. You can activate your microphone.
Okay, thank you, Manon. Thank you for the speakers for their presentations. I have a question for Robert, also concerning technologies. What about autonomous vehicles and self-driving cars? It's a technology of the last years that is coming up. Do you see that in the logistical chain, this technology, because of Corona, has a more significant impact, or do you see that in practice it's that it has an impact already, or is it too soon to say?
That's a very interesting question. I would say automated vehicles in warehouses and automated warehouse systems and so on, this is still a big investment. And of course, in Russia, as I think in many industries, not just the logistics industry, but you have that relationship between the cost of your finance, your interest, and the cost of labor, you know. And I don't think we're still at that point where heavy investment in the cutting edge technology would necessarily give you in the short term the payback. However, one thing is seen, and I mentioned it in my presentation, we see it very much now that when the companies they've been closed down, sales have been closed down, all the shops are closed. Then when the retail starts to open, the share of online sales is much higher. And so going forward, the interest in and the demand for then more fulfillment centers kind of logistical setups with the technology that involves, I think that will be a feature. And then, of course, it's usually, I mean, you have big players active on the market, AliExpress and others, and they, of course, they will make big investments in their own logistical facilities. But you'll still have a lot of other companies who need to sell online, but they're not going to make those big infrastructure investments themselves.
Okay, thank you for your answer.
If that answers your question.
Thank you, Jeroen. Do we have still other questions? I don't see anyone raising hands. So I think I'll give the floor back to Arkady. Arkady, do you want to take the floor, please?
Your microphone, Arkady.
No? Yes? Sorry. Thank you, Dimitri, Robin, Robert, for your excellent presentation. I will just insist on the next webinar because it's a new strategy of the Russian government about the LNG. LNG, we will be connected directly with London, a specialist in this sector activity, and also with Moscow and Belgium, of course. It's important because the government wish create joint ventures with foreign partners, and this sends us in direction of joint projects of LNG. Well, for me, I hope to see you soon. Thanks for your participation, and I wish you a very great weekend at home for many, I think, but have a nice weekend, and thank you for your participation. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Bye-bye.